Each NBA icon has their own tale involving Larry Bird, and they often seem like folklore until you grasp their reality. Indeed, Larry Bird was incredibly tough and an unmatched trash talker. He backed it up with his skills, if you catch my drift. Sean Kemp found out the hard way after Bird scored 50 points against him in just 3 quarters. I'm aware of Larry's background, yet I had no clue about his true tenacity. Bird wasn't merely an exceptional athlete. He was truly unique. His banter could cut deep, and his performance validated it consistently. But here's the wild part. The initial remarks made by NBA legends to Larry Bird, along with his icy replies that rendered them speechless. Stay tuned, as these tales are not only remarkable, they will transform your perception of the iconic Larry forever. Let's dive in. Robert Parrish. Robert Parrish teamed up with Larry Bird for more than 10 years. One consistent remark Parrish made about Bird was that he epitomized the perfect teammate. When Parrish arrived at the Boston Celtics in 1980, he had already been informed of Bird's mythical talents, but the reality of playing alongside him was beyond his imagination. He compared it to magic, emphasizing that Bird was a once-in-a-lifetime, franchise-altering athlete. Parrish eventually confessed that Bird was the most self-assured and boldly brash player he had ever encountered. It wasn't merely words. Bird proved himself consistently. What struck Parrish was that Bird didn't only go after his rivals. He also challenged his teammates during practice. You have to admire Larry Bird. He could be blazing one moment and freezing the next. He was relentless with his banter, yet rather than belittling them, he motivated them to improve. Regardless of how badly you performed, he never criticized you harshly. One piece of advice he'd offer was, if you're struggling, just do your best. We all have those off nights. Events seem to be unfolding against your wishes. He often articulated what you inspire. The fierce competitiveness of Bird influenced Parrish significantly. Throughout the years, they formed one of the most formidable front-court pairs in NBA history. Despite the multitude of championships they claimed, Bird's chatter never ceased. Yet Parrish remained ever vigilant in his listening. As Bird and Parrish rose to iconic status as a duo, another bond would ultimately shape Bird's journey: his fierce competition with Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson. Among those who understood Larry Bird outside of Boston, none matched Magic's insight. Their competition, ignited during their college days, evolved into the signature clash of 1980s basketball. Yet prior to their rise as NBA legends, they were merely two youngsters who encountered each other on a basketball court for the very first time at a Kentucky college tournament. Initially, they both watched from the sidelines, with Magic excited to experience the prowess of Larry Bird. We participated on a collegiate team in a tournament. This marked my debut sitting on the bench. He and I sat on the sidelines. However, once we entered the game, we really showed our skills. I noticed this guy completely dominate Jack Gibbons. He was the standout player of the year, wasn't he? Kentucky, if I recall correctly? Absolutely. Bird gained Magic's admiration through that performance. Larry Bird was cutting through his defenses effortlessly. I realized then, I thought to myself, this kid really has it. I'm on my way, my friend. This young fella. Although Larry's style, transformed and fresh talent burst onto the scene, his brilliance was not overlooked by newer legends of the game like LeBron James, who regarded him as one of the all-time greats to step onto the hardwood. LeBron James. Even as LeBron was just a child during Larry Bird's prime, he still had the insight to appreciate true excellence. Throughout the years, LeBron has frequently shared his admiration for Bird's iconic games, but one instance truly resonated with him. In 2017, LeBron took to Twitter to highlight Bird's remarkable 1985 showdown with the Atlanta Hawks, where Bird dropped a stunning 60 points. LeBron's tweet expressed, "Check out the Hawks bench starting at the 130 mark. Larry Legend was unbelievably talented. One of the greatest." LeBron couldn't help but be captivated by the sight of the Hawks bench erupting in cheers for Bird, the very player who was dismantling them. Some of the bench warmers exchanged high fives after Bird's shots, as though they were observing a deity of the game in action. One of the Hawks even toppled from his seat as Bird nailed a challenging three-pointer from the corner. While LeBron has ruled his time on the court, he always pays homage to the legends before him. With Bird, the admiration is genuine. Gary Payton. Known for his bold trash talk, Gary Payton has always been confident, yet he couldn't deny that Larry Bird was on a different level, recognized for his defensive prowess and knack for aggravating rivals. Payton believed he'd encountered it all until he faced Bird. The initial matchup against Bird remains fresh in Payton's memory, as Bird predicted every shot he took before making it. He described to Payton precisely how he intended to make a shot, and then did so flawlessly. At one moment, Bird looked directly at Payton and declared, "Listen up, I'm going to launch this jumper right in your grill over there, and it'll be a gift for you this Christmas." He added, "I'll wrap it up and leave you bewildered." Payton was left speechless. He'd exchanged banter with many throughout his career, yet Bird was the first to substantiate every claim he made. Larry Bird was the most intense talker on the court, and his icy demeanor helped him succeed immensely. Despite being a defensive icon, Payton had no option but to admire Bird's skills and charisma. Payton viewed Bird as the epitome of toughness, while another sharpshooter, Isaiah Thomas, considered Bird a basketball mastermind. Thomas, having witnessed numerous great players, was still utterly unprepared for what Larry Bird brought to the game. Thomas soon recognized that Bird was more than just an exceptional shooter. He was a basketball mastermind. In their initial encounters, Bird always seemed ready with a response. He could hit shots from all angles, distribute the ball with precision like a point guard, and engage in psychological warfare like a true pro. One of Thomas's cherished anecdotes about Bird occurred during a match when their lineup featured Kelly Tripucka, Bill Laimbeer, Kent Benson, and three outstanding white players. As they stepped onto the court, Bird glanced at them and asked, "Who's guarding me?" He remarked, "Listen, you can't assign any white guy to me. I'd have to show some serious disrespect. Don't ever place a white guy against me. That's just an insult." Years down the line, when questioned about Bird, Thomas declared that in a clash of titans, Larry would emerge as the ultimate victor. Another legendary competitor, Reggie Miller, held a distinct perspective on Bird, valuing his strategic mind above everything. Reggie Miller had great admiration for Larry Bird. In his early days as a shooter, he emulated Bird's style, particularly his knack for trash talking and mental warfare with rivals. When interviewed about a choice between Larry Bird at his peak or LeBron James in a fictional draft, he stated, "I've got to pick Larry Joe. With today's rules, he'd be unstoppable." Absolutely. While Reggie Miller viewed Larry Bird as a top pick for his ideal team, Karl Malone had another viewpoint. He recognized Bird as the ultimate rival. Malone, renowned as one of the hardest players in NBA history, still acknowledged the respect due to Bird's unwavering confidence. He remembered a specific game against the Celtics when Bird approached their bench during a timeout. He scanned each player and boldly announced that he would sink a three-pointer from the bench. While I watched, he glanced at the floor, then seemed to throw something, and just like that, he made a three. Kevin shot a glance at the bench, as if to say it would be a tough evening ahead, and Larry Bird's actions left a lasting impact on me. It was indeed a memorable timeout. Malone would eventually recount that this legend had a distinct initial meeting with Larry Bird, yet Terrell Brandon also experienced a memorable introduction to one of the NBA's all-time greats. Terrell Brandon, a savvy point guard recognized for his basketball smarts, first encountered Larry Bird in the early 90s. As a budding player, he had listened to numerous tales about Bird's banter and intellect on the court, but nothing could have readied him for the real deal. Bird is a psychological assassin. He mentioned his destination and the spot he intended to target. Neither of the two seasons were in play, and he was handling the ball for the Celtics. He asked, "Who's on me?" I replied, "Craig Yellow." He responded, "Why is that white guy on me?" Bird wasn't merely talented. He consistently operated on a different level. Whenever Brandon believed he had him in check, Bird effortlessly maneuvered to craft an opportunity and sink a seemingly unmakeable basket. Brandon often confessed that Larry wasn't just exceptional. He was playing a game of chess while the others were stuck playing checkers. During his encounters with Bird's mental tactics, Terrell Brandon experienced the edge of Bird's psychological games, while Byron Scott directly witnessed the depths of Bird's enjoyment in embarrassing rivals. Byron Scott, an essential part of the Showtime Lakers, was already aware of Bird's notorious trash talk before facing him. But there was a vast difference between knowing and living through it. Bird didn't bother to acknowledge them. So, while we were in the final moments of the game, he turned to James Worthy and said, he states, "You all needn't be concerned about him. Just head over to that spot." He mentioned, "They're going to create a screen for me. We're about to inbound the ball." He stated, "I'm a current player. He's urging us to start. He's asking us to begin even before they make their move. He plans to head straight to that corner. I'm the one catching the ball, ready to shoot, and either equalize the score or clinch the victory, no matter what the situation is." Scott chuckled. He figured Bird was merely chatting. Handle the ball confidently. Move straight to the corner. Trim the third shot. Seriously? It's as if you're joking. Scott was taken aback. Who would deliver shots like this? Even Scott would agree that Bird was simply on another level. He dished out his banter and stood by each claim while Byron Scott was humiliated by Bird's predictions. Doc Rivers witnessed one of Bird's finest displays up close. Doc Rivers, prior to stepping into his role as an NBA coach, he was a gritty, defense-focused player throughout the 80s and 90s. In one of his first encounters with Larry Bird, he found himself in a game where the Celtics clashed with his squad. This was far from an ordinary matchup. It turned into a rout. Bird dominated Rivers' entire roster, showcasing not only his own skills, but also featuring Dominique Wilkins sinking long-range shots, executing behind-the-back passes, and pulling off insane fadeaways. At one memorable moment, Bird drained a tightly guarded three-pointer, glanced at Rivers, and seemed to cast a spell over them. Things went wild when he began to dictate the play. It was that match where he really put Dominique through the ringer. He viewed Dominique as a rising star and took full advantage. In fact, he toyed with all of us. He was sinking bank shots, asking who was next, and from where we wanted our next lesson, just racking up one hit after another. In a recent interview, Doc reflected on the game, making it evident to all who truly excelled on the court. While this legendary player recounted his memorable battles with Larry Bird, Brian Shaw shared his initial thoughts and personal experiences facing the Celtics icon. Shaw recognized Larry Bird's stature as one of the all-time greats. Yet he was taken aback by how humbling their first real encounter was. Shaw and his fellow Boston Celtics player, Reggie Lewis, were putting in some extra practice time at the gym when Bird strolled in and issued them a challenge. I recall one of the early practices when he approached me and Reggie, saying he wanted to take us on 1-against-2 to the score of 2. We were like, seriously? He said the only condition is that I get the ball first. Reggie and I exchanged glances, thinking, sure man, whatever you say. Before long, it was 6-0. Bird was single-handedly taking them apart. So we decided to double-team him. He finally failed to score. We gained possession and then strategically avoided him. In the end, we triumphed with a score of 7-6. I thought, well, it turns out he had more skill than I initially realized. Shaw acknowledged that Larry was a unique type of player. Brian Shaw witnessed Bird's unmatched prowess on the court. For Oscar Schmidt, encountering Bird was simply a heartfelt tribute. Oscar Schmidt, often hailed as one of the finest international basketball talents ever, never set foot in the NBA, yet his reverence for Larry Bird was unchanged. In his 2013 Hall of Fame induction, Bird himself had the honor of presenting Schmidt's award, and Schmidt seized the moment to express his deep admiration for Bird. My friend doesn't sprint, doesn't leap, yet outperformed everyone else. He's present. This is my hero, the finest player ever. Schmidt wasn't merely being courteous. He genuinely felt Bird was the best. He was in awe of Bird's knack for commanding the court, even without elite speed or athleticism. Schmidt had gone up against some of basketball's greatest legends, but in his eyes, none could rival Larry Bird. While Oscar Schmidt looked up to Bird, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had a contrasting viewpoint. He had to contend with Bird at the pinnacle of competition. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. By the time Larry Bird emerged in the NBA, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had already established a lengthy tenure in the league. Initially, he didn't regard the rookie forward highly, but that perception shifted dramatically as he witnessed Bird excel in every competition he faced. However, the defining experience for Kareem unfolded later in Bird's journey. During a classic Celtics versus Lakers clash, Bird delivered an extraordinary display of talent, prompting the announcers to play the Superman theme music while showcasing his highlights. I recall the match he had versus the Lakers. He was phenomenal. He took charge. Our announcer even played the Superman theme while discussing him post-game, as he dominated in every aspect. Scoring, rebounding, assisting, stealing, he did it all. He further expressed his deep admiration for Bird, stating, Kareem eventually confessed that Bird was the greatest opponent he ever faced. The finest competitor I encountered could very well be Larry Bird. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar experienced Bird at the height of his prowess, while Shawn Kemp got a harsh introduction to Bird, suffering a 50-point defeat. Shawn Kemp, known for his incredible athleticism, was one of the most gifted players in NBA history, but that didn't count for much in the face of Larry Bird's talent. Kemp stepped onto the court as a rookie facing Bird, filled with the optimism and self-assurance typical of young talent. I had some awareness of Larry's legacy, yet I was unprepared for the intensity of his game. It didn't take long for Kemp to realize that matching up with Bird was a monumental error. With his 50-point revelation, it became evident that Bird was more than outstanding. He was in a league of his own, and this tale continues from there. Next, we'll hear from Kevin McHale, who experienced a memorable first encounter with Bird. Kevin McHale had the unique honor and challenge of being both Larry Bird's teammate and rival in practice sessions. This allowed him to witness Bird's extraordinary talent firsthand daily. Yet one specific moment remains etched in his memory. In a crucial late-season game, the Celtics found themselves trailing by 2 points, and Bird was struggling, missing attempts, and turning the ball over to the opposing team. In the midst of a timeout, Bird, feeling irritated by the game, strolls over to McHale and nonchalantly mentions he's planning to sink a three-pointer to clinch the victory. We had a scripted play, and as I was set to inbound the ball, Larry insists he's ditching the plan. He declares he's just going to step back and launch a three. I'm like, come on, we're down by 2. Let's at least go for a 2-pointer to tie it or drive to draw a foul, especially to push for overtime. But Larry, in classic fashion, insists he's going for the 3. I'm thinking, unbelievable, as he strolls over to the rival bench to trash talk. He tells the Phoenix squad and their coaches, I'm about to drop a 3 on you and send you home. And with that, he receives the ball, breaks from the play, moves to a spot, and as the shot goes up, he turns to the Phoenix bench, telling them they're just making a mad dash for the locker room. His confidence was not born from arrogance, but from an unwavering belief in his talent. McHale got a front row seat to Bird's iconic self-assurance, while David Robinson gained a fresh perspective on rivalry when he faced Bird. Entering the NBA, Robinson was recognized as one of the most physically imposing big men of his time. His significant impact on the league made his viewpoint highly valued, especially when discussing who he considered the toughest opponent. This was revealed in an interview where he was asked about his favorite adversary on the court. I understand that many younger fans might not have vivid memories of Larry Bird, but that guy was pure magic. He was impressive, no doubt, and even at 69, he had the finesse of a guard. While he wasn't the fastest or the most athletic, his heart was fierce. Competing against him was my initial glimpse into a level of competition I yearned for. That kind of rivalry is what shapes you into a powerhouse. Robinson recognized Bird's remarkable basketball IQ, but for Joe Dumars, Bird's brilliance was the reason the Celtics were so hard to beat. Dumars, an elite defensive guard, took pride in shutting down the top scorers in the league, but facing Larry Bird was something else entirely. I reminded them not to overlook how remarkable Bird and his silk-smooth game were in their prime. They were nearly unbeatable, and the reason was simple. Mistakes against them were not an option. Burrell wasn't the fastest player on the floor, yet he consistently anticipated the action, predicting the movements of others before they happened. He executed passes that others overlooked, and once he decided to take a shot, he became unstoppable. His court vision was extraordinary, always thinking 2 plays ahead. Dumars acknowledged Burrell's sharp intellect, but for Dennis Rodman, facing Burrell as a rookie was a wake-up call. Initially, Rodman was known for his tenacious defense and relentless drive, but back then, he was just a newcomer trying to find his footing in the league. Burrell was a familiar figure from Rodman's childhood, and when they clashed in the Eastern Conference Finals, it felt like facing an ultimate challenge. My assignment was to mark Larry Burrell. Here I was just 25 and fresh in the league, tasked with defending him. It was daunting, and that became my sole focus, shutting down the toughest competitor on the opposing side. Burrell was determined to impart some wisdom to Rodman. So, I found myself guarding him, and each time I positioned my head, he'd taunt from the three-point line, saying, "I'm right here, rookie." It was like chasing after a trickster, but I pressed on, compelled to contest his threes. In the end, the lessons resonated. Rodman internalized Burrell's teachings, propelling himself into the ranks of the greatest defenders in basketball history. From Robert Parrish's respect to Dennis Rodman's humbling, every NBA legend who crossed paths with Larry Burrell left with a memorable experience. Some felt awe, others experienced irritation, yet all were captivated. Burrell was more than an exceptional athlete. He was a sensation. His smack talk, basketball intelligence, and overpowering prowess made it evident. Facing Larry Burrell on the court was unforgettable. Did you find this video entertaining? Tap any of the cards displayed on your screen now for more related content. I appreciate it.